Hi, good evening. Oh, I am sitting in front of this computer for the last hour and trying to make camera work because after an extensive preparation to come and sit and do this transmission, I find out the camera is not working. So I'm a little bit indisposed, but I decided I'm gonna do this anyway. So I'm using two different devices now. Oh, don't mind me while I can make myself comfortable because whew, I don't know what's happening here. I don't know which one will work out. So hopefully this will come out as I wanted it to come out because it's so. I made a video last week in Serbian about completing the process of initiations that I had with different archetypal energies, lineage energies the thread that I'm following, that I was talking about in other videos, and a transmission and on a threefold flame that stirred up a lot inside of me. I basically activated myself while listening to it afterwards. So it was a week of sadness sadness for me after that. So it kind of took me a lot to sit down and make this video, and then with all of these obstructions, obstacles, I didn't feel like doing it, and I still don't feel that quite good energy about it. I'm sitting here and I'm doing it, ain't I? Anyways, I mentioned that I finished my processes with Hector's and with the Mary, and the last one was with Mary Magdalene. So I started like this transmission, not knowing where it's gonna go. And because I'm following a certain thread in my memories, and for me, though, some of the things that I was listening to and doing with myself turned out to be initiations. So basically, those were the initiations of a threefold flame and eternal flames that are the carriers of divine energy, life codes, solar codes within us. There are obstacles. I don't even remember what I said last week. I'm sensing a lot of obstacles right now. Something not so nice above my head that is trying to prevent me from speaking. When I was sharing this transmission last week, I didn't even know where it's going to go. And I said a lot of things that I cannot even repeat right now. That's because I don't remember what I said, but now I really have a lot of obstructions in it. And I'm not going to stop because it's not going to be any different next week. Plus, I'm in today. I'm in a liquid fast. I I had to do it because of my energy is changing. So for the last couple of weeks, I have introduced to my diet my liquid fast once a week. Basically, the should be a fast on water, which I did once upon a time in my life, but I can't do it all like that now. And mostly, then I was feeling angry, and now I'm feeling a lot of heavy energy being cleared up. And I have also been advised not to channel while before I finish the clearings that I'm into, but I needed to. I mean, I felt the urge last week to do this transmission, and what I said obviously bothered somebody because I said many things that are out of the narrative. Because I spoke about Mary Magdalene and the way I hear the energies speak to me about it. What I found out throughout the years of working with this energy, most of my teachers, all of my teachers that I have ever met, that I worked since some 20 years ago, were from this lineage and are working with this council that I mentioned and are Mary Magdalene students mainly, and have worked with her. And that she spoke to me through them. Some of them came to my house, they found me, I didn't find them. And yeah, I decided it was time to speak about some things that bothered me. And I didn't call them like that. I didn't say it openly like that, but it was mainly about it. And from what I learned, because, the threefold flame, the eternal flame, those uh, lineages that I mentioned, the priest and priestesses, that 13 families that came from Atlantis and far beyond, even before that, are all carriers of this flame. And it is basically a life-sustaining flame. And while I spoke about Hathors, it's the womb. When I spoke about the womb, it's the flame in the womb, it's power in the heart. Mother Mary, it's truth and love. And the third one was here, Magdalene flame, which is about wisdom. So the first misconception about that is that everybody is seeing when they speak about Mary Magdalene, Magdalenes or Magdalenas, they speak about with the womb. I think that's the womb rights, and she's the holder of this space. But no, these are Hathor energies and Hathor archetypes and Hathor goddesses, goddess Hathor. Because of the lineage that started when it didn't start in ancient Egypt, but it mainly worked through there and came from there. And although all of those that I mentioned were carriers of these flame, they have different vibrations. And Mary Magdalene is wisdom. She's actually the one who combines all of this and transcends all of this. And she is like I already said, Mary and Magdalene were not names. Like Magdalenas are priestesses. It's a code for a priestess. Later on, it became a code for a witch. Mary also is a code for a priestess, and Magdalene is a code for a priestess. They belong to different lineages that at some point came together. But Mary Magdalene is a code for a high priestess. Mm, so why am I saying this? Because, like I said in previous video, they all had different names. They existed in historical figures, from what I've seen from my findings, but they had different names, not the ones that we know them up from and we call them by. And they are myths. They're presented to us. Not they didn't their lives didn't even look completely like we are presented. Those are myths and codes for us to decipher. Some true, some things were added, and some not. Some were distorted. Some were infringements. So, like, just say Mary. Like I said, Mary. It represents the lineage of Mary, the lineage of feminine energies that are creator energies that we call goddess energies that came from other planets after the alien invasion on those planets, and it happened on many planets. And when I say feminine energies, I mean feminine principle. And I don't think that there were not male who were carrying those energies. There were male and female, because in these kind of energies that are creation energies, it needs to be a balance of male and female energy. So those priests and priestesses that have been mentioned, they're coming from different lineages, mainly from this lineage of Mare, but there are others. I mean, I'm following this thread, so this is why I know about it. And as in Mary Magdalene energy, they are mainly from the house of David. But if there is it goes beyond this, before this. So when I speak about Mary Magdalene, I'm not going to say, it is coming to us from where I am in my country, from the West, from the Catholic world, because she's a Catholic saint. Here in our Orthodox country, we are Christian Orthodox. We don't mention her. She doesn't exist in our preachings. I've never heard of it. She might be mentioned as one of the Marys that were carrying the myrrh and anointing, but specifically she's never mentioned as Mary Magdalene. Maybe Mary of Bethany at some point, but possibly she also has a different name, because Jesus Christ also, he's called Jesus Christ, he's also called Emmanuel, but in the footnotes, he has a different name, and if you pay very close attention, that's his real name. And it's the same name that it's, I think, used in Muslim scriptures used. So she's not mentioned. We have some other feminine saints who are canonized saints, like Saint Friday, like Mother Mary. We mentioned Mother Mary, but not Mary Magdalene. And Saint Friday, which also had a different name. She was a woman who lived in Constantinople, and it's not the same figure as Mary Magdalene. So we basically don't mention her here. And it's not that she's unfamiliar here, but it's more so becoming familiar lately. So besides all of the other misconceptions that I keep hearing, we have our own misconceptions about it, considering that it is coming from Catholicism. And we have other pantheon of gods that we connect, and other kinds of pagan religions and goddesses and gods that we connect to, that are transferred through these saints that we here connect with. So as feminine like archetype of that sort, we do not have her. We do not mention, she doesn't exist here. While from what I'm hearing and what I'm learning through esoteric scriptures and knowledges and Gnosticism, she represents a divine consort, while Mother Mary represents a, a divinity, a divine mother. She's a divine consort. But from what I've heard and what I understood and how I perceive it, uh, as being in Gnostic scriptures presented as a spouse of Jesus, she's a divine feminine and divine consort. And Mary Magdalene actually means high priestess, and Magdalene by itself, it means it's a name of a city. Well, they say it's a name of the city where she lived in, but the name of the city where she lived in is Svat or something like that, which it's a small city, some small city in the Sea of Galilee. And whether that one or the other one, because there are several cities, one in Egypt that is called Magdala and one there. And there is also a city called Amygdala, which actually what Magdalene is, it's amygdala, which is in the center of our brain. Those cities, especially Magdala, from what I've learned, have gained their name in the 5th century. And I think she didn't exist. She didn't exist by then. So it's possible that they have been given those names by her. And also she had some other misconceptions throughout ages from Catholic Church in 7th century, where she was proclaimed to be a prostitute or a bad woman. But when we're talking about that, it's about what I was speaking about in other videos, about the misconceptions about women and feminine energy and how we perceive what we project into these into women, into us, what men project into us, and what the society, the cultures, the patriarchy is projecting into us, and what matriarchy also projected. So basically, patriarchy or matriarchy by itself, they wouldn't be bad as such, but the disbalance that each of these brought is not good. And what brought all these issues that we are dealing with now. So for me, the story of her, although I started with the meaning of the word Magdala. It's a tower. It means a tower or a stronghold, because these cities have towers. So amygdala in our brain, it's like downloading information, like not a fortress, but like a tower, like not something like a lightning rod, or maybe more like this stuff. So it's something that actually connects two halves of our brains, and it's like, I don't know if you can see this, it's like this, you see, right and left hemisphere, and in the middle it's something that is a shape of an almond, and that's amygdala. And amygdala is different from pineal gland, because our pineal gland actually projects images to us, and we see images. It doesn't download information, it just projects it out so that we decipher it, we decode it. But this downloads information and also creates a bridge between polarities. Not to say that left and right hemisphere in our brain are polarities, but they are doing different things and decode information differently. So in order to communicate, they needed something in between, like a union like it's a union of these two polarities. And this is what she is. Mary Magdalene means exalted woman, wise woman. And this is a part of cerebellum, a part of our brain that is in our back of the brain. And it's something that we use as a baby in a mother's womb often. This is how our subconscious actually thinks, because it thinks in pictures and symbols, and it hears color, sees music, and this is, you know, like being in the mother's womb all the time. And this is how we receive information from our subconscious, but from the universe too, from higher powers, from archetypal collective energies, collective conscious and unconscious energies, but from the universe. And it's in the back of our brains, so it's also this part of us. It's called witch eyes. So this is why this is like a code for a witch, a priestess, high priestess. This is why Mary Magdalene. And the way I received it is that this is a higher title. It's a title. Mary and Magdalene are both titles, and together they represent a different title, a higher title as a high priestess. So there are many Marys and many Mary Magdalenes and many Isises and many Sophias, and it represents being taught and initiated in a certain lineage, or being part of the certain lineage, but maybe lately mainly taught, because we're all coming from Sophia. So it means that you are initiate of a certain school and certain cults. Those were cults before, but esoteric schools. And when I say esoteric, I don't mean, for me, these are schools of life. They in different times were not seen in esoteric schools. They were like priesthood. They sustained cities, states. They sustained rulers. Like in Egypt, Hathors were sustaining pharaohs and helping pharaohs in different ways. That there were temples, and in temples you had different ways that they would worship, and different art temples, in which they would download information and decode and present what was being taught from these different consciousness streams that are coming from different stars. So belonging to this different lineage of these 13 families means that you are belonging to a different stream of consciousness, that you came from a different, from a certain lineage, that came from a certain constellation. So that's what it meant. And some of these lineages merged throughout time, some even before coming to Earth. According to my knowledge, through my clients and through what I hear from other therapists and from my own findings. So this is what I mean when I say the lineage of Mary. They were like Mary's. It meant divine waters. They worked with divine waters, and this means that they worked with different streams of consciousness from these certain constellations, and they were downloading those codes with themselves, with their very existence, with those flames that were innate in them, but were ignited at certain points in time by their souls, so speaking, higher power. They're not only their own soul, but it's more like these higher priesthood from those constellations that still exist there, that still works there. And it's threefold flame or the triple goddess sign. When you come to think about it, there are three forces of creation everywhere, like trinity of creation. In our mythology, it's always trinity of male gods, pagan gods, but they have consorts. They all have consorts. They all have had wives. And it's a different way that your higher self is presenting itself. It's emanating. And when they come together, they form a much higher being, which is for some soul, for some oversoul. So you are not everybody is a carrier of those flames, and not everybody is working as a Prometheus to spread light and enlighten the humanity and bring new knowledge, new codes. Well, I say codes, but it's not codes. It's light, because in the unit of information is light. So by remembering themselves, those who are initiated and the members of those lineage, by remembering themselves, by reclaiming their talents, by reclaiming their memories and everything that it's theirs, by igniting those flames inside of them. They're doing it for everybody else. They are igniting the ones who are carriers themselves, but who actually have to go on doing this, and the ones around for whom this is sort of speaking an awakening. Because what is enlightenment? It's understanding something. Because when you don't see something, when you can't see, you have sick eyes and you can't see. Once your eyes are healed and you see, the world sometimes didn't change, you changed, and you say things in a different way. So it means that when we're awakened and we're enlightened, we are seeing things differently, from a different perspective, and yes, from different dimensions, sort of speaking, because we grew energetically. We integrated more of us, more of our flames, more of our soul in us, in our energy body and in our physical body, because our energy body grew and became more clear, more luminous, more luminescent, and flaming, for some even flaming. So this is when we're speaking about the dragon codes and the carriers of the flames and keeper of the flames and keeper of the fires. That's what we're talking about. And for most, those are solar codes, because we're solar beings. Us human beings, we are solar beings, and we grow and we receive through sun and through solar codes. And the codes that we're receiving is from galactic core, central sun, Alcyon, which it's a Pleiades system, which is the central place of them. It's a central sun, and it's both the planetary consciousness of Alcyon is the consciousness of Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, because we all have, as a bigger being, some of us are planetary consciousness, or were planetary consciousness at some point, or still are. We just need to connect to that energy. So that's what it means, being a high priestess. It means that you're downloading these energies from the priesthood, from your lineage, or the lineage that you're initiated into, the school that you're initiated into, with the teachings that you're spreading and the igniting of yourself. But as union of polarity, wise one, which means, Sophia is wisdom. So basically, High Priestess is mm, grounding and embodying and downloading the feminine principle, goddess, creatrix itself. I mean, male and females, both high priests and high priestesses. It's always one goddess, but it's with different emanations depending on which it's one divine mother, but depending on which planetary consciousness you are connecting to and downloading. It's a different lineage and a different goddess archetype for you. Most of those have done this through most all of their lifetimes here on Earth and in other places. And yeah, exalted woman, wise woman means the one who has transcended all the polarities within her. Not doesn't mean resolved all the conflicts, but it should, best would be the aim that we're looking at is that those things are not triggering you anymore. But it means that somebody who's actively working on it and working on oneself and changing oneself and one's reality is changing all the others. So it's just basically a wise woman. Although, yeah, she was Sophia embodiment, same as Mother Mary. Some say Mother Mary was her teacher. They were Isis initiates, and like I said, I was told that Mary Magdalene is a higher rank than Mother Mary, but I mean, maybe not all the Marys, but Mother Mary, she's much higher energy. Mother Mary has attained her divinity, and she's a divine energy. While when we speak about high priestess, any high priestess, it's somebody who's on Earth on some other planet, living there in a certain body that exists there, but is bringing down, grounding those energies wherever she is, if high priest wherever he is. But it means like a union, also union of all opposites, but also union of spirit and matter in one being or more beings. But in this case, it's union of all polarities. In our case, in what I'm speaking about, it's like union of east and west, union of left and right hemisphere, union of male and female, union of divine feminine and divine masculine. And when it's a story about twin flames and twin rays. And when I say this, it's I don't mean that it becomes one being. I mean, on some level, we're all this one. Like the soul group is all one sphere, one of this one being. But when I speak about it, I don't say that you are a hermaphrodite of some sort. It means that those energies are compatible, and at some point they were created together, but they came off the same spark, but they are compatible more so than with somebody else. But it's a story about union of polarities of all sorts. This is why she is a wise woman, because she has transcended all these polarities. And she sees beyond the veils. She sees in the dark, and she can help others through this darkness. And she is the light, like a torch in the dark. And I need a little assistance because I get stuck. And yeah, that's where her story is for me. from what we are presented, the narrative that we are presented with, although she's being recognized by a church now as a 13th apostle, or some say apostle of the apostles, for me, her story is not of somebody who is recognized or admitted or respected even. Although there are a lot of myths and narratives now that haven't been here like a couple of years ago that are lifting her up in the stars, but everybody is sort of claiming a right on her, and everybody is claiming to be her. Like, nobody really knows her name. And Mary Magdalene, like I said, it's not her name. Like, just think about it. Mary, I mean, in Israel at that time, this kind of name did not exist. And some vowels and some letters didn't exist. So, I mean, Jesus couldn't have the name of Jesus because it's not a common name at that time. No Yahweh, no Yeshua. And it is written. His name is written, but hers isn't. And there are also some stories about her being called Lilith, which is not true. That's not her name. Oof, I don't like that energy. Those are not two. Those are completely different beings. Oof. Whew. And this is a program that certain groups, like certain Masonic groups and satanic groups, like very much. And I've had several clients with this kind of programming, thinking that they're either reincarnation of Mary Magdalene or Jesus. And they genuinely believe it. They're not lying. They're breeded like this to believe it because they have a use from them in this way. And it's a program. This is how, and there are certain things from what they say, how I recognize that it's a program, not only by how it feels, but when I say like something like what I just said, I'm sure of it being a program, because they just like to, convince people into something and attract people to their way in this way. And it's a completely different story of some of those sessions that someday I will sit and make, I think, because it's unbelievable when I come to think of it, that I actually sat with those kind of energies and that a completely unbelievable session with them, with the energy that normally I wouldn't be able to withhold at all, like you saw now. But I was made to sit and emanate love. So this is because I know which forces are actually working through me and who's working through me. So this is why some of these programmings and some of these narratives bother me, because I'm being told something different. And what I'm telling you now is, yes, from the things that I've heard from other people, because I've sat in several groups. Not Magdalene groups. I was only in one Magdalene group, but I was kicked out of that one because I was sharing some things, some memories that bothered someone. And because of the other issues, because I needed to be accessible to some of those energies that I just mentioned, and my guides thought differently. But all of these is what taught me how to recognize, how to listen to the things that are now being said, to the things that are being, people who are telling you those things are, they think they're genuine. They're not lying, but it's a narrative they are presented with, which is not true. 99% of those people claiming that are part of the lineage or that are initiated are like marketing tools, like a sales pitch. And there are people who don't even believe, especially around here, that they existed, that they're historical figures. But I'm following the line of memories that I had, a thread that I have, and I'm telling you something different. So what my guides are telling me, it's what I'm telling you, and from what I understood. I never read anything about them except the Bible, and this is not something that I'm sharing because I read something somewhere and because somebody told me something. There are some things that I heard from somebody else, and I'm sharing only the things that resonated with me as the truth. About her, Mary Magdalene, she's from the lineage of Isis because she came, they were unsure whether she's from Egypt or Israel, but she's from Egypt. And from what I understood, from what I've been told, she is from the line of kings, and her parents died when she was young. So basically, she belonged to the temples and the Isis temples, and she was a disciple of Isis, right? But she also had belonged to that lineage, which I don't think she even remembered that until a certain point when she became healed. I believe the story about removing 7 demons from her is about healing her and actually liberating her, because she was a slave. When you belong at that time, a woman, because there was a patriarchy system, very strong patriarchy system, and Jewish system at that time was not a very liberating one, not liberal one, especially not to women. Those who didn't belong to anybody, women and children, especially female children, they belonged to temples, so they were slaves. She was a slave, and she wore red because she was a slave and she belonged to temples. And I've had clients with genuine memories, not of her, but of those times when they were slaves wearing red capes, and several of them. Not all of these stories are bad stories. It's just that they were not free. They didn't own anything. So to me, this is why I said that, she's presented as a 13th apostle, but she was also referred before as a prostitute. Not to say that she was one, but you're working in an Isis temples, especially as a high initiate at that time, which is, not so far from after the fall of Egypt. In the fall of Egypt, especially in the late days, a lot of sex magic was being misused in the temples. And she was a tantric, and a lot of high priestesses and high priestesses were used to initiate kings. And some of them were, especially in Egypt, consorts, wives, and they lived in harem of the pharaoh, because pharaohs had harems and had more than one wife. So she lived in Israel. She didn't live in but she belonged to the temple. She came later to Israel, but she didn't come from there. And from what I understood, she lived in the temple as a tantric, as a high priestess, which means that she was initiating others and she was activating. And I've heard others who have memories of being a high priestess in Isis temple, that this is what they did. They have been, especially in the, Egypt has a long history, and it was changing. It was not always like that, but in the last days of Egypt it was like that. So they were used like a high escort. So I cannot the story, it's not about to devalue her. I'm not trying to devalue her, but it's about devaluing a feminine energy. A feminine energy at that time, that's what I'm talking about. This is what the story, that myth, that narrative that is presented to us, it's talking about a devaluation of feminine energy, of a goddess energy. Because from the matriarchy, it was aggression, it was wars, it was powerful women who were aggressive, and this balance of male and female energy. And then males became aggressive to females, but then they were seen as not equal to men, but in service of man. But as a mother, you're seen differently. But as a mother, you're not always a sexual being. As a wife, you're allowed to be a sexual being, but when you belong to somebody. But as a woman who doesn't belong to anybody, you either belong to a temple, you're a slave, but you're used for different purposes. You're clean in this, you're part of the harem, you belong to somebody or something. So you're not free. You don't own anything. You don't have money. You're not entitled to anything. You are not even entitled to your own body. You're not entitled to any possessions. You're not entitled to your own talents, because they're not nurtured. You're not even entitled to exist, if somebody else doesn't allow you that. If you don't follow the rules, and if you don't behave as they want you to behave, you don't even have food in that time. But we see the remnants of this even now, because there are still these programmings that women are not allowed to possess, that women have less money than men, that women are less paid than men, they earn less money. Although some of them are providers in their families, but they're not seen as those. And that I won't go into all these programmings, because I became a little tired of all of this, There are many disbalances. You're not allowed to own anything. You're not allowed to be better than a man. It doesn't have to be that you can't own anything, but you're not allowed to be better than a man, whether that man is your father, your brother, or your husband. You're not allowed to do better. And if you do, you are functioning from male energy. And then you have problems in your relationships with men, namely your partner, because it's a disbalance. This is how we are brought up. So her story, for me, is a story of somebody who's a 13th pig, not a 13th apostle, because she sticks out everywhere. She doesn't belong anywhere. She cannot take her place, because nobody wants her there. If she shows herself, she is a needle in the eye to somebody. Like, she's a follower of Jesus and his student. That's who she's allowed to be. That's what Catholicism allows her to be. That's what she's in the Bible. And in Gnostic scriptures, yeah, she's his spouse, but nobody's speaking about her talents and what she actually had, and the lineage that she actually carried. And you can follow the thread of those myths in many different cultures, because this is the story of Venus and her descent to Earth and her descent into the underworld also. We all follow the story of Venus through our lives. I follow it through my entire life, but all of us, through different phases in our lives, we follow this story of Venus. So this is her story, is a story, like Mother Mary's in a different way, and hers is also a story of Isis temples or Venus temples. And if you come to look at the certain period of age of our culture, you had temples all over that were they were not tantric temples. There were tantric temples in certain areas, but they were like sex houses, they were temples of, I'm not going to call this free love, because there was exchange, and they were workers. In Greece, you have those temples. In Cyprus, you have those temples. In Persia, Iran at this time, in our days, you have these temples. They're all over. I can't even remember now. It's about devaluing feminine energy and feminine principle to somebody who is fulfilling somebody else's needs. It doesn't mean that at the same time she's not fulfilling her own needs, but she's not allowed to not to have the needs. She's not allowed to express herself. She's not allowed to recognize those needs, to shine and be something more, unless she belongs to somebody. And even then, she's either a spouse or a mother. When you're a mother, you're seen differently. Like, we still all see these remnants now. Even in Greece, you had the most famous female philosopher, poet, Sappho, and she was a prostitute. She was a sex worker, like a high escort, but still. And how I know, I thank God for my philosophy teacher, because I learned many things from him about those issues. He was a misogynist, but he adored wise women. So he would always mention some historical figure that was very wise, and some who would change the way the society thinks, and he would speak very highly of that woman. But the biggest compliment that he could ever give to a woman, or that woman, or his students, or any kind of woman, is that you are smart as a man. Mind you, I had myself a program. I didn't like that. I had a program that I had to clear, and I worked on it last year for a couple of months. That men are stupid. And I apologize to everybody watching this, but this was in my subconscious, and it comes from all these lives where I was a high priestess that was devalued in different ways. And all of my lives, every single life that I remembered, all of the threads that I follow were of a high priestess. And those lives, and from what I see from my clients, from what I listen from my colleagues, of their examples of their clients and their own memories, none of those lives were easy. Because you were an awakener, you were somebody who is activating somebody else in different means, in different ages. At some point, that meant through tantric initiations, and I'm being very polite. And if you know anything about the story about Pythias in Greece, who were seers, and Magdalenes are seers. Mary Magdalene also means a seer. Why? Because of these witch eyes in the back that actually awaken. That when you combine all those three flames, those eyes dragon eyes or witch eyes, are the ones that you're using to see. And this is what for many. And I actually think that this is actually what real awakening is. And it's not one bit easy process. So Pythias, the life of a Pythia was not easy one bit. You had to have a certain rules, and you lived in a certain way, and you were closed in a confined space. And I as much as I remember, I mean, I heard it from a client that they were lying, and they were fed through something. It was not a coffin, but something like in the ground, and they were fed through a hole. And even in Egypt, in initiations, in the certain initiations in the Isis temples, in the temple, not well, in temples of were very difficult, because you would be going through different phases, and there are some of those that you possibly would not survive if you hadn't attained a certain amount of energy and knowledge. If you're not able to download the knowledge that is coming to you at this moment. And some of those sound very vicious, and I'm not even wanting to mention that. So yeah, actually this is something that, yeah, you saw as a sort of honor, but in a way you're also somebody who's like, she was a slave at that moment, but at least, I mean, in many cases, as a high priestess, you were sacrificed for the benefit of others, or the temple, or the congregation, or whatever, so that you are protecting them, or allowing them to continue on in peace and whatever. And all of my lives were like that. I was eaten, dismembered, burned. No, I wasn't burned. Drowned. My heart was eaten. My brain was eaten. I was thrown in a pit. I was thrown from a high place. I mean, I don't remember what happened exactly in Egypt. I said that I don't remember my lifetime in Egypt. That's not entirely true. I said it purposefully. I remembered one, but I don't know from which part of Egypt that is, or which time in Egypt, because it had a long history, and I kept coming back several times there as different reincarnations. I was the youngest wife of a pharaoh, or a consort of a pharaoh, and I think that was I don't know which pharaoh though. I don't know the name of the pharaoh. They all had the same name afterwards. Like, when you're accepted into certain kings, there had the same name. Like, all the priestesses of Isis were called Isis, because you're given this new life and this new identity. And I was white. I was not from those areas, and I think I was from these areas here. And when exactly was that, I don't know. We went there on some occasion, like a family. And yeah, I was in those days, there were a lot of scheming and plotting, like everywhere around kings, and I was killed by being buried alive. And at some point also, when pharaohs died, they usually, although everybody else who lived with Pharaoh and belonged to Pharaoh, and they were alive, they were buried alongside with him. So at one point that happened, but at the other point I was killed because of these scheming and plotting, and I was buried in some pyramid or pyramidal shape, but I don't think it was there. It was, again, somewhere around here. Because I was from the king, some sort of king's lineage. My father disowned me at that lifetime. That's what I remember. But at the fall of Egypt, everything that I cannot remember and I cannot attain at this moment, I think has to do with all of these sex magic manipulations. Because, I mean, this is how they maintain peace and maintain the civilization. Not only through, I mean, different means of receiving information, but also through magic. And at some point it was becoming distorted. So why I'm saying all this, because I think Mary Magdalene was coming from that part when all that became distorted. And although she was coming from the line of kings, she was from the line of Benjamin. They were kings, but there were clans, different clans. If you read the Old Testament, you will see different clans fighting amongst each other, and they were fighting with other clans, and they were not too nice towards women, and especially because the others wouldn't give their women to them. They were just take them like a slave. So they were not themselves too nice to women. But at some point, those two lineages became like one. So this is why everybody, saying that they're from the house of David, because it all became one lineage afterwards. But there, she was coming from this one. It's a longer story. That story started, her story, like in this way that I understood it, like somebody who doesn't have her place, who is not taking the place of a princess or a queen that she is, because she doesn't have that inheritance anymore, and her parents are not alive. It's coming from not only from the ancient Egypt, it's coming from the Atlantis, when she was, I think she was also High Priestess in the Atlantis, and she was killed by her students, and it's coming from the other planets. She was in exile. She was a queen in exile. She was a queen in exile from Egypt. She was a queen in exile in the other lives, and she's a queen in exile on other planets too. And this lineage comes from Lyra, and through Pleiades, Ryan, Sirius Ryan, and Atlantis, and so on. So when you're talking about being reincarnation of this being, try to remember those lives. She's not reincarnated. She has fractals here. She's very much present here, much more than Madame Mary. Madame Mary is present like a narrative, a spirit, or goddess presence that we invoke. But Mary Magdalene is more of a story of High Priestess who hasn't attained her divinity yet, because she's here and there. She's in 3 different galaxies, in 3 different dimensions, in all of the dominion of the creation that her emanations created. But she's also very physical. She's everything physical. She's everything earthly. And she's somebody who hasn't, like the story of somebody who hasn't attained, at least the way it is presented to us, attained her divinity yet, while her divine spouse, her divine masculine, has attained his divinity, but he left. she left behind. He left. He did his bit. Well, and he left. Whether he lived on or not, that's not what I'm talking about now. There are some different stories. Like he died on a cross. He didn't die on a cross, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about him ascending. He ascended, and she hasn't ascended because she's still in this earthly slavery, so to speaking. Not a slave as she was then, but in the same way, like everybody is trying to grab everything she had and everything everybody's claiming her place by herself. She is awakening everybody else. She's activating everybody else. By the way, Magdalenes, all of the ones who belong to the lineage, the ones who are really fractals of Magdalenes, have special powers, and they mainly entail unearthly powers that are difficult to carry, but they awaken in them quicker than in somebody else, like in seers, like in lightning carriers, like flame carriers, like speaking in tongues, light language, and some have some of those and some have all of those. They can be quite a few. And this is how you would know them. These are not usually, only healing powers. These are the powers of the awakener. And you even have I think it's a Protestant fresco where she activates others around her while speaking in unknown language, or I would say light language, but it's an unknown language. She spoke languages. She was possibly educated, but the story of being 7 demons being removed from her, it's for me the story of her actual liberation. And afterwards, she was carrying the torch. She was a teacher. She was carrying afterwards, but she stayed down here. They say allegedly she went to South France, and she was a teacher there. She had a blue rose school. We call it a cult now, but I don't know if it's called at that time blue rose. It's because she had a blue staff. She had a blue stick. And it has to do with blue flame. One of the flames that I'm talking about are bluish color. It's a blue ray belonging to the blue ray. So one of the flames is blue, and the blue flame is in the womb area. When I say womb, I mean energy center. I'm not speaking necessarily about physical organ, although it is seated there. Those flames are different colors, and it's blue, golden, and violet. And when they are blended together, and when you're exalted in them, they become magenta, which is like magenta rose or something like that, which is her color, but it also goes beyond. It's another story. So I see her differently, as in a violet lilac flame or magenta. That depends on what she's doing and what is happening. So as her fractal, she has it's more than one being, and they're not necessarily women or women, because the part of the lineage are men too. They're priests too, but when you have children, you have male. Sometimes you have boys, not only girls. So I'm a fractal of this energy, and I have been for a really long time. I only saw this energy as my guide, and it was the first guide ever that came to me. And I was told by several others this, and I discovered it myself later on, but I didn't see myself at the very beginning like this. And namely because of the difficulties that these energies that you are carrying in your awakening entail. And whatever it is that, so meaning when you are High Priestess or Mary Magdalene, which Mary Magdalene means High Priestess, so you can have many Mary Magdalenes, but that means they're High Priestess. Some of them, they might not have such difficulties in their, but from all of them, from my clients whose stories I've listened, who have been doing, who are in service to, who are in service to others and doing these kind of works, and were in priestess lineage, priest or priestess lineage. From my colleagues, their clients, and from my colleagues' stories, everything that we are dismantling are those stories of difficult lives that we all had by helping others, by being the torch bearers of these certain energies, the flame bearers. And it's no wonder that most of those people don't want to do this. They don't want this to be known. They don't want to share this. It's not, I mean, you had a lot of trauma that you had to confront, that you have to deal with, and then you have a lot of misconceptions still around all of these. First, they don't recognize you, they judge you, they project on you, they hate you even, because you are bringing in a change. You're bringing in something different. You stick out. And it's not always jealousy, it's fear from something that is different than them, from something that is instigating change. First, they fear you, they hate you and throw everything at you. But afterwards, they raise you in stars, and everybody wants to be you. And mostly the ones who have who have wronged you, start claiming that they are you. So this is what's happening to her. So to me, this is the story of a woman that is not being given the right to take her own place, of a woman that is being left behind and her consort ascended, while she's being prevented to ascend with all these narratives that are thrown at her. And all of us, by integrating this feminine principle and talking about this and remembering this and understanding, awakening feminine energy and understanding what this really entails, because following feminine principle was never easy. The story in South of France is a story of Cathars, and they did not end up that well. And it's the storyline of her goes that she escaped to England, and this is why you have these symbols there where she kind of, I don't believe that, because I don't think she could have possibly lived that long. And by what I've seen, she died in South France, and she was killed with everybody else because it was a massacre. She was betrayed by some of her students, like she was betrayed in Atlantis several times by those who wanted to claim her gifts and place. And it's usually by the ones who do not have the capacity for that. And it's also the story, her lineage, the story of those lineage, not only her lineage, but the lineage of High Priest and High Priestesses are the lineages who are persecuted. She's persecuted. She's persecuted all the time. From those star constellations till here. And her children and her, offspring, but when I say offspring, like I mean the lineage, they're all persecuted, and no wonder nobody wants to really claim their spot. She's constantly in camouflage. She has to hide. And all of those people who ever did something good and carried this torch feel like they have to hide. They still have to hide. And truthfully, even when you show up, when you show your nose, when you speak up, sometimes you do provoke a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of aggression, a lot of ignorance. Because this is how the light works. It has to light up everything that is hidden. It lights up. It doesn't have to, but it lights up everything, so it's shown, it's seen. Sometimes it's benign, but sometimes it's not so benign. It's happening to me now. Not as bad as it used to be, but I'm persecuted by the same beings that have been persecuting me before. I'm still dismantling that story. We are all still dismantling those stories and liberating the feminine through our lives, through this awakening of goddess energies. While she's awakening, she's not yet a goddess. She's on her way there because she's not yet ascended. Because until we claim her and give her the right place and the right understanding of her life, what she really was, who she really was, not what we want that energy to be, she will not ascend, because she carries all our energies on her. That's what people who clean do. And that's what her story is for me. That's what this story is telling me. This is what I hear in this narrative. Even the ones who are raising her in the stars, they place a label on her. And it's the same story with Venus. And also, when she's there for somebody else, like Mary Magdalene was there for somebody else, like it's a woman is there for somebody else to fulfill somebody else's need, whether it is her husband, father, brother, family, or a child. Mary Magdalene follows Jesus. She's his wife, consort, and some say she even helps him resurrect with her knowledge of Tantra. And it's the story of Venus. In Greece, you have these rituals where they would carry yearly, I don't know what time, where they carry the body of her dead lover who was mortal, Adonis, and she mourns him, and everybody, and the women who are carrying this body are mourning him, and then she resurrects him. And you have these rites, rituals in the Slavic tradition too in different way. Women who were, marriage rituals, and then they were given to dragons before that. But mainly it's all the story about the union of opposites. It's the story of love, because what ignites the flames, what fuses the opposites? It's not only union is not enough, because you can have, different numbers and different apples and flowers in one place, but they do not form a union. A little force is needed that fuses them together. And it's love. That's what ignites those flames. Balance of those energies instigates union, and flames ideally should not only instigate your potentials, but also divine love. So the union of divine feminine and divine masculine is not a proper union. It's nothing if divine love is not instigated. If divine is not present in the center of their relationship, if it doesn't bind them together. And I also have this story where as a twin flame, I'm not respected. I'm not being recognized. So I'm speaking this from this experience. So not only union of the polarities is not enough. It's love, but infused with divine love, which are divine flames. Triple flame of divine Mother Father God. That ignites and initiates the spark, brings that everything to life. I have this massive headache here, and it makes me want to cry. Honestly, this is why I look strange and stuff sometimes, because I feel the physical pain there. Is there anything that I wanted to say? Anything else? Yeah, I met a few people from this carry those energies who are fractals, but not all of them have instigated the flames in themselves and are using all this potential in them and given to them. And I'm not some because they don't want to. Honestly, it's because the opposing energies are not allowing them to. It's when you start to awaken those inside of you, it's like the whole hell itself comes at you. And that's what's making me want to cry now. I'm just listening for a moment if there's anything else I need to say. Yeah, awakened feminine bothers a lot some of those energies, not only because of the galactic history and invasions, but because union of divine feminine and divine masculine brings balance, and they are unable to function in these kind of energies. They basically cease existing. So the story of twin flames being in separation, it's not only because of the dismantling of karma and all. Most of these karmic cycles are created because one of those is left behind. If one ascends, the other is left behind, because everything is, keeps you in this karmic cycle. So while her divine masculine ascended, she's left behind in a karmic cycle. So he kind of is not in a karmic cycle anymore, but she still is. That's what it means that she's in imprisonment of a sort. And why is this? Not only, there's like this hype that you need to clear everything, karmic everything, before coming to union with your twin flame, which is actually not true. This is the story of to keep you in separation, because certain energies don't like it, and they will do anything to prevent unions of twin flames. Twin rays mainly in twin rays means that one of those is not incarnate. But as the energies are changing and you're raising your frequency and vibration, and you can reach dimensions and see dimensions that have not been visible to you with your common eyes, earthly eyes, or the parts of the brain that you have been using so far. Even twin rays can become visible to each other and in union physically in this new earth reality. I mean, there is no new realm that already exists. We just open our eyes more. We remove those veils. I mean, I hate calling them veils because they're not veils, but I don't have a better expression. We remove a whole lot of beliefs that were not even ours to begin with. They were placed on us. All the lies that we're served. Not only now, not only through the narratives that are going on now, but through many lifetimes and different agendas that they had to keep these. Whatever they had to keep at that time. In every fall of every civilization, if you follow those myths, you had chaos, you had some sort of, if not war, but you had many catastrophic events going on around. And now, even now, when we are all about needing to create our new selves, new reality for ourselves. Maybe we don't have, in some places there are proper wars, but maybe we don't have as many wars as we used to have before, as the ones that we know of. God forbid. But there's no peace either. Because peace it's a vibration. It's a different vibration. And it's prosperity, it's abundance, it's balance, it's harmony, growth for everybody. And yes, what I forgot to say about divine feminine and divine masculine, why are feminine the ones who are usually being kept in cycles, is because a woman can attain much more spiritually than a man. Can go higher because she attains balance of her divine feminine inner male and female energies easier, and women tend to trust their intuition more. But because they're creators and we have wombs, I mean, physically we have wombs. Men don't. There is something like an energy imprint, like I spoke about it. It's not a proper womb. So women can bring spirit into matter. That's what woman does. So this is why women can go quicker, higher, and even without a man, spiritually speaking, can grow. However, in a union, a man grows alongside with his divine partner, but only if he lifts her up. And he's a god if he respects his goddess. So the trick there also is to keep a woman not submissive, but she supports you. So this is a misuse of creation powers of first flame, the womb flame, because a woman usually uses this energy to create, and in a balanced relationship, male-female relationship, you create together with this energy. Men and women can create separately, but they create differently, and quite usually these womb energies, everybody's interested in womb energies, and sort of steals this energy for the ones that this is why those beings are so interested in keeping certain feminine who are carriers of the flame captive, because they cannot create themselves, and they can combine those energies of the divine feminine and masculine even when they're not together to create what they want to. So the story is that your woman supports you. Behind every strong man is a strong woman, and behind every strong woman is herself. Bullshit. This is a story about theft, energy theft. Your womb energy is for you. Yeah, you can share with your partner, but then it means that you grow together like balloons. So when a woman is lifted up, when you respect your goddess, she gives you a hand and lifts you up. As she rises, she lifts you up and she lifts everybody around her up. If you bring her down, she is quite capable of bringing everybody else down. Unconsciously too. I mean, not because of being aggressive, but when a woman like that is sad and depressed, and everybody, those kind of energy is going to be going all over the room. And this was the misuse of energy of sex magic in Egypt, because the pharaohs were kept from their Hathor priestesses through the power of their sexual energy that's being used. It said it's being used for healing too, but you also had groups, and then women would connect their wombs and share their Kundalini energies and send it to a certain priestess, and that meant that that's misuse of power of energy too. Yeah, this is why I have female sisterhood groups and brotherhood groups, but they work different separately. And I'm not only talking about sexual energy and life force. I'm talking about other things, because women need different things, and in sisterhood groups they can share things differently and grow differently, and they cannot do some of those things in mixed groups. But then essentially they came together and they would do something together, do some work together. And I'm not talking about sexual energy exchange, but those that is meant for you and your partner. But then while creating for yourself, you're creating for the entire community. So divine feminine and divine masculine, when they're together and when they're lifted up, when they are in divine union and divine love, and when they're igniting their divine flames, they're doing it for everybody else. And this is Western energies don't like it. But this is how the ascension for everybody happens. And I'm hearing a whole lot of women, strong women, powerful women with talents, who don't remember their talents, who don't use their talents, who are disrespected and demeaned because of their talents, because of something that is divine in them, that is the best part of them. And that is heartbreaking. That breaks their hearts and breaks the hearts of everybody. And this is exactly how we came to where we are. By disrespecting goddesses within us and beside us. This is the story of not goddess rising, of divine divine flames, divine union, divine love rising in all of us. This is what is needed for balance. My mission as a soul mission in many lifetimes, not only this one, but it's at the high places. It's keeping the balance. Masculine and feminine energies balance. And I have been deprived myself of that for a really long time. And lately, that's what's been happening for me also. This is also the story of sisterhoods, of the destruction of sisterhoods and what's happening in the sisterhoods. And look what, not everywhere. There are sisterhoods that function really well and they lift each other up and they lift as they rise. But many are not doing this. Many are shedding the other ones who they feel more powerful than them, they have some talent, some abilities, or something that they feel they don't. They shut them down, kick them out. Worse things happened before, but many of those groups are just supporting an image and agenda of someone else too. So it's the same story as in male group in patriarchy systems. I don't see the difference there, although they're speaking there. I'm speaking from the experience here. Not everywhere. Is this what is going on? Not everywhere. But unfortunately, I have the role of a pioneer in certain things and pathfinder, path shower, and I listen very well. Sometimes I don't say much, but I listen and I absorb and I connect the dots. Maybe not at exact moment, but later on I do. And mainly because all of this also provokes a lot of pain, so I had to do a lot of work on myself too. This also has to do a lot of repeating of the cycles and these karmic patterns. And some of those karmic patterns are instigated in you and placed through the holograms and implants in you. This is what they're for. This is what they're there. And I learned it again through my clients and myself. And that's another story that I will share at some point. It's just that it becomes really hard to go. It feels sometimes as if I'm going through waves of this heavy energy to just make a video when I want to sit down and make it. Like today and the past week. I mean, there's a lot of heavy energy as it is because everything and everyone is clearing. And, but with me speaking like this of the things that are less spoken of in this kind of way, like in the road that is less walked on, a road less taken, I don't receive a whole lot of blessings. That's all I'm gonna say. And I do appreciate them, and I invite them, and I need them. And that's what I'm going to be asking from you now for myself, because if you want me to continue to do this, I need your support. Because most of the times it sometimes feels as if why bother? It's too heavy. Because I've been sitting here. It's rather late now. I'm going to be up all night. I am already up all night. And this brings us to one very important point that I forgot, to the story of Mary Magdalene, which nobody actually mentions in everything they're saying about her, is a story of devotion. Because you are devoted to the divine, and you do whatever it takes, whatever it needs to be done. In spite of everything. She was devoted to her divine masculine. She was devoted as a teacher. She was devoted to her students. She was devoted to her path. She was devoted to the divine. She's devoted to Divine Mother, Father, God. I hope I am expressing devotion through what I'm doing now. And I think I'm going to end this video now because I still need to do a transmission, because if I leave it for tomorrow, I won't do it. So, thank you for being here and listening to what I have to say. I hope I am expressing true Magdalene energies here from what I said, and that's all that matters. Whether I got something right or wrong, it is about sharing the flames and divinity flames. And a devotion. And this is my devotional. This is a devotional channel. This is my devotional practice. And this is why I do it. In spite of everything, because this is a portal that needs to take you to where you need to go. And mostly it happens when you come to a session with me. But that is a different kind of devotion. Thank you. Thank you.